if I can control my state, it's easier to control yours.
Yeah.
So when you say, can I teach you how to put somebody in a trance? I can show you how to relax. And I intend to do that in a few minutes.
And the truth is, the foundation of everything I do is a combination of all things I've absorbed, but really NLP was the base of it all. And I brought Richard, I called him up. I hadn't had the privilege of learning from Richard. I just happened to have been exposed to John first. We're different worlds. And John and Richard, very different people in radically different ways. And while I have great respect for John, his elegance and his language, I was more associated to Richard, quite frankly, because I'm a little crazy and people sometimes perceive me that way, and sometimes Richard as well. And he came in and I told everybody in the group before I brought him up, I said, people have been very playful and crazy and they learn to do pattern interrupts and things like that. And so I said, Richard, you know, comes from a different world. I come from the streets a little bit. I think Richard has a little bit of that. In the streets, it's a different way of there being rapport, and respect's really important. I don't want anything being misinterpreted. He's coming out here. I want to make sure we really take care of him. We said yes. And then Richard came up, and someone came up and interrupted him doing this stupid pattern rep. Then another kid walked up, and like Richard was really being wonderful and warm. And the next person walks up, and he's got like a hat, black hat, and a cape, and he goes, I've got a problem. And he starts talking like he's the Godfather. And Richard's trying to be patient. I remember vividly, I don't know if he remembers this in detail, but he's like, what's his problem? And he had this little guy beside him, and he goes, it's my son. He goes, what's your son's problem? And he said, and the son starts talking like Donald Duck, right? So Richard was still very wonderful, and got the guy to sit down. It's like, leave him alone, let him do his talk, right? Some guy runs up, jumps in Richard's chair, takes Richard's hat. Do you remember this? And his sunglasses, he remembers it all. Takes it, puts the hat on himself, puts his sunglasses on, and sits in Richard's chair while he's standing on the stage. And my eyes are going like this. But it's the last time I got the privilege of being with him. So I want to make up for it here by having all of us give this man the respect he deserves. This is the man that all of our tools are built on. When he comes up here, let's give him the honor and respect he deserves of all that he's built. And all of you, if you've benefited from me, you've benefited from Richard. And we have the privilege of having him in person. I just thought it would be such a wonderful thing at this stage of life to experience Richard where he is.
By the way, there's something I'd like to say about Tony inviting me here. I haven't seen him in decades, but I do want to tell you something I have noticed over the years. I have traveled this planet and taught classes on every continent but Antarctica, and I'm not planning to go there either. But nobody has taken my work and inspired more people to do something about their lives than this man, Tony Robbins. Just as a general rule, it'd probably be a good idea to pay attention. Remember, first and foremost, I'm a hypnotist. And that means I'm going to be talking to both your minds, not just your conscious mind, but your unconscious mind. Now, just to give you a little history, when I started in 1970, the operating beliefs about personal change, because most of the things about personal development and things like Tony's doing now and Mary Morrissey and all of this stuff grew out of the human potential movement, which was a reaction to psychiatry. Psychiatrists at the time diagnosed everything, and almost everything was defined as a problem somehow. In fact, when I started, the DSM, which was the list of mental disorders, was only that thick. And then a few years later, it was that thick. And DSM-3 was 2 volumes. DSM-4 was huge, and I don't even know what it is now because I don't bother to look at it. Because as far as I could tell, most of those categories had no value. This began NLP because I was giving music lessons to a kid whose dad was a psychiatrist. And when I transferred to a 4-year college, the psychiatrist said to me, I have a spare house there. Now, I've never heard anybody said that. I grew up with virtually nothing. I grew up a poor kid. And, I remember when we got a television the first time. And I remember just staring at it with it out, not being on, just going, that's great. I didn't even know what it did. You know, back in the 1950s, it was a fairly new invention, right? And, you know, and it was green screen and black and white, and it was only on a few hours today. And, you know, this was a big innovation. So in my lifetime, I've seen that. I've seen people go to the moon. People used to say if something was impossible, they'd go, it's as impossible as trying to put a man on the moon. We've been there and back 7 times. People died on the moon. Most people don't know that. 2 people died on the moon. And just because they weren't keeping track of what they were doing. There was sunspot, and they didn't get back in the space capsule fast enough, and they died on the moon. You know, and NASA didn't know how to do those things. And when I was talking to Tony yesterday about NASA, and, you know, just the idea that they were going to do something that impossible, because they went to Kennedy and they actually said there are 3 things we could do. We could feed everybody on the planet. He goes, we could probably cure most diseases, or we could go to the moon. And Kennedy went, let's go to the moon. And a lot of people were at that time were very offended by that. And one of the weird things is one of the reasons why we have cures for disease and got rid of smallpox is because of the space program. Because we invented the disposable hypodermic needle. And all of the things that had to be invented led to all of the things, your cell phones and all of the things that go on and now, the massive big corporations employing millions of people. A lot of that stuff is a direct result of trying to do something that was impossible. Now, I grew up in a world where most of the people, you know, post-World War II, you know, were doing things, building houses, and you know, the economy was pretty good, you know, at that time because we had a general in charge of the country. And, you know, Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. I remember he ran against a guy named Adlai Stevenson, who was a super liberal, right, you know, who, you know, was interested in feeding people in other countries. And Dwight D. Eisenhower said, what we need are roads, right? And, you know, and there were people that went, how could you vote for somebody that wants to build roads? There'll just be more cars. But it led to employment, it led to building hospitals, it led to an economy that's made us, and especially you people, fairly wealthy. And you know, that the vision of the future, if it's limited, if you base the future on problems. Now, all of psychiatry, all of the human potential movement itself, Gestalt therapy, TA, all of those things, there were massive numbers of them. When I moved into the psychiatrist's house, it was filled with books. I'm a very avid reader, and I read all of them, and I was flabbergasted. Over 100 books, not one of them said a single thing you could do about anything. Not one, except take drugs, right? And remember, it's the 1960s. I knew all about drugs. I went to college, right? And they didn't help. You know, I'm sorry, I was a musician, and I can tell you straight ahead, drugs do not make people smarter, okay? I played in bands with people that consumed enormous amounts of drugs, and they never got smarter. In fact, they got stupider and stupider and stupider. And fortunately, there are certain things that happen. Bass player in my band who took any drug he could find in any place. He went into my medicine cabinet one day in the 60s, and took a couple pills and walked over to me and said, would these make me high? And I said, those are my girlfriend's birth control pills. I said, you won't get pregnant, but you might get cranky once a month. That's about the best they're going to do for you. Now, when I read all of these books, I said to the psychiatrist, he came to visit me, and I said, is there a psychotherapist that can actually do anything and get it done? And he told me that he knew a woman named Virginia Satir. And Virginia just happened to be coming to visit her. So I started asking her questions. I was an information science major, and I knew about information. I knew about mathematics. I knew about equations. I knew symbolic logic. I knew how to program a computer. And in those days, it was very complicated. The languages, in fact, I worked on one of the languages because that's back when a floppy disk was this big. It was called an RKO5. You needed a pickup truck to bring a program over to somebody else's house. The world has changed tremendously over the decades. But when Virginia arrived and I started asking her questions, I said, well, how do you know when, what you're going to do? And she said, I listen to people. And I said, well, how do you know what to listen for? Because, that's what mathematicians do. We want to be able to represent things in a calculus and compute what to do next, And it was funny because there was a psychiatrist there, and the psychiatrist kept interrupting me and saying things like, that doesn't matter. And Virginia would go, of course it does. And she told me, she said, I have this intuition that tells me what to do. And I said, well, what tells your intuition what to do? Right? She goes, well, if you pay attention to your intuitions, then you'll know what to do. Now, I then went and watched Virginia work with the family. And it was a 3-hour drive. I drove her because she didn't drive very well. And on the way there, she told me to go in her purse and pull out a leather strap, a little strip of leather. And I said, what's this for? And she said, I'm going to see this family. She goes, I'm going to talk to the mother. She said, I'm going to talk to the daughter. And she goes, and the identified patient, because that's what they had in family therapy in those days, was a juvenile delinquent and a lot of other things with schizophrenic tendencies. They always had these lovely labels for everything that basically say that you won't do what they want you to. And I've never met somebody in a mental hospital who is cheerful. You don't go to a mental hospital because you're cheerful. And what happened was, is Virginia says to me, she goes, when I talk to the father, the little girl's going to have an epileptic seizure. I want you to jump on the stage and put this between her teeth so she doesn't bite her tongue. And I thought, cool. You can make people have epileptic seizures? And she said, no. She said, just when I talk to the father, she said, he's going to start to cry. And he's not that kind of person. And the daughter is going to react this way. And I said, how do you know that? And she goes, it's just a feeling I have. I went, great. Where? And she went, in my gut. And I went, in your gut. And I said, then what tells you to have that feeling? And she said, she went like this. She goes, I don't know. And I said, great. That clears it all up. And sure enough, we went in, she started talking to this family. She'd never met them before. She just had a case history that was sent to her. She turns around and starts talking to the father. And I got to tell you, this guy was a prick. I know pricks. I grew up in the neighborhoods that were full of them, right? And there was only one way to deal with them, and it was called a 2x4, right? This guy was a first-class prick. He was mean to everybody in his own family. He was a complete asshole, and all of a sudden Virginia turns around and looks at him, and she goes, I hear you talking, and all I can say is, you seem so terrified. She said, it must be really hard for you to lose control of your daughter and your family, and you tried so hard and worked so hard your whole life. She said, I can hear the tears forming behind your eyes. And this guy burst out crying. The kid falls on the floor and has an epileptic seizure. And I took the leather thing and stuck it in the mouth and went, that was so cool. That was just so cool. Somebody did something, predicted what would happen. And when I went back in the audience, 200 people are watching, all licensed psychotherapists. And all people kept saying was, she's so intuitive. Now, I'm a mathematician. I know what that means in English. I can translate that into human. That means I don't have to learn it. That's exactly what it means. It means I can't learn it because she has those intuitions. It's not me. It's not something that's learnable. And I made a decision at that time that I would go through and figure out how to make this predictable, build a calculus for it, and teach other people to do it. And that was the foundation of the work that I did with John Grinder that became the structure of magic. Tony mentioned this wording, deletion, distortion, and generalization. Okay, those three principles are called the three universals of human modeling, which I outlined in that book. And to this day, people keep asking me where they came from. The answer is I made them up, okay? Well, laws of thermodynamics, somebody had to make them up at some time. You know, when I founded the field of neuro-linguistic programming, people said, why don't you want to be in the field of psychology? And I said, because it has a basic flaw. The flaw is that you have to understand what went wrong in order to be able to change. Anyway, what happened was when John Grinder and I got together, we took the work of Noam Chomsky, who had built the first model of how the brain works neurologically. And it was about language and about the unconscious processing of language. Everybody knows in their own language what's a well-formed thing. If you were born in America, you know a well-formed sentence of English, whether you studied grammar or not. The only people who don't are grammarians, because they get it wrong a lot, because they have rules that don't fit the intuitions of people. But if you say colorless green ideas sleep furiously, most people understand it's not a well-formed sentence. But if you go furious ideas sleep furiously they know that's less well-formed than the other one, but not as well-formed as saying Bob went to the store. And the fact that you can know that without knowing how is because the hardwiring in the brain that allows us to learn languages no matter where we're born. And no matter where we're born, there's universals that function about the transforms, and you can predict how neurology will learn language and whether the words are different or whether the syntaxes are different. German and English both have about 100 different syntaxes. They're not the same one, but they have about 100, and up to a certain age, they're identical, and then they become more idiosyncratic. Now, once we did that, I started looking and talking to my psychiatrist friend. I said, so what is it that you guys can't do? And they started telling me things. There was a group of 6 or 7 psychiatrists, and they started going, well, we can't do this, and we can't do that. And like one of the things they mentioned was phobias. And I said, so can you guys bring me each one person who's got a phobia of something, right? And bring me one person who had a phobia and got over it. And they all looked at me and they went, how would we know if somebody got over a phobia? And I said, well, I know a way. So I put an ad in the newspaper. And I literally put an ad that said, if you had a terrible fear, an overwhelming fear, a phobic fear, and you got over it, I'll pay you $100 to interview you. And then I gave them a lie detector test to make sure they weren't bullshitting me, which was about 90% of them, by the way. And by the way, I got a really cool lie detector from an agency that shall remain unnamed. But I was also a physicist, so I did some work for them as well. And when I did the interviews, all of the people told me almost the identical same story. There were idiosyncratic parts of it, but they all said, you know, I hit this point where I just started to get fed up with it. You know, Tony was talking about threshold. They'd go, you know, and it was always something like there was a guy who was a race car driver, right? Now this guy gets in a car, drives hundreds of miles an hour in a pack of other cars, not afraid at all. But he couldn't go up an escalator. Couldn't do it. Legs gave out. I took him to a shopping center with a 4-story escalator. He couldn't even walk up to it. His legs gave out. He plopped on the floor, started twisting around. And I thought, that's so cool. I said, you can get in a car and drive hundreds of miles an hour, inches away from another car, and you can't go up a fucking escalator. And I said, how do you do that? I said, because you didn't even make it to the escalator. In fact, when I brought him back to my office and started talking about being in the shopping center, he got terrified and there was no escalator. Now, I discovered over the years, like when I do seminars, we bring snakes, spiders, all kinds of stuff in. And we don't fool around. We bring the biggest fucking spider you can imagine, the size of my hand. These are professional spiders. They go to elementary schools and walk on kids' hands. But at the beginning of the week, when I say I'm going to do it, there are people that will freak out. They'll jump up and they'll go, I can't stay for the seminar if you're going to bring a spider. I can't stay if you're going to bring a snake. And I have to point out to them, I go, look, you're terrified now, and there are no spiders here. In fact, once on the last day, there was a woman screaming in her chair going, I don't know if I can stay in the room because the snake is here. And the guy with the snake missed his ride. So the snake was late. You know, it was London, there was a lot of traffic, and he actually took the snake on the tube underneath, he had it in a sack, you know. And he called me on the cell phone, he goes, I'm going to be an hour late. And this woman's freaking out, and I said, well, excuse me, the snake isn't here, it's late, right? You'll have to wait an hour and then freak out. And, you know, and I said, but if you think about it, you're not afraid of the snake, because you were afraid when there was no snake. You're afraid of the idea of the snake. Now, there's no better way to scare the hell out of yourself than making a picture of a spider the size of a lobster and seeing it jump on you in that picture, which is what people do when they terrify themselves about something. If you don't have control over your thoughts, then you don't have control over your feelings. Everything Tony demonstrated today was to get things in proportion. Now, I'm a little more direct about it. I'm more like a sledgehammer. Tony's a little bit more like an artist. He relates to people. He's congenial. I'm not. I'll warn you in advance. I'm one of those people that if I don't like your conscious mind, I get rid of it and talk to your unconscious mind. Those people that were in that movie Out Cold, that meant I didn't like them personally until I was done, and then I probably did, because they came up and whined to me about stuff. Now, there's a point at which most people don't understand the power of your neurology. You have millions and billions of neurons, each talking to 10 to 100 others. There are as many neurons in your brain as there are stars in the sky, which means the number of configurations is infinite. And what happens is when you start to think about something which scares you, or you think about something that frustrates you, or something you worry about, it goes down a neurological loop. Now, be it ever so microscopic, the way it knows to do that is by size. So that these little neurons go to the next one in size, even though there are billions of them woven together. This is how you're able to have the same problem over and over again and the same success over and over again. If you know how to open a door, you come up and you have a brand new door. It's close enough to other doors that you do this. And as long as you didn't read the word push backwards on it, you'll do fine. Now, when people get interrupted, when they try to push a door and it's actually a door you pull, being left-handed, when I built my first, remodeled my first house that I bought in California, I'm like Tony, escaped and left. I left earlier than he did, and for different reasons, but similar in structure. Especially it was the taxes that got me and things like that. But I left the country. I went to Ireland. I got out of Dodge big time. I'm back in the U.S. now. I live in Texas, which is kind of like Florida without ocean around it. I don't have a view like this out my window. And when it's summer, it gets hot. And today it's pouring rain, but I'm not there. Now, the best thing that you can learn from me today, because I only have a short time with you, is to take control of your thoughts. Because if you change the way you think, it will change how you feel and therefore change what you can do. Now, as I went through the years, because as I used to go into hospitals and do crazy ass fucking shit, because being a physicist, I know about the nature of reality. And when psychiatrists talk about the nature of reality, they don't even suspect anything about reality. I can't think of a group of people that were more out of touch about it. They would say to me like, well, I have a patient and he had a nervous breakdown. And I'd go, which nerve broke? And they'd go, well, that's not what I mean. I go, but that's what you said, right? And I said, you put a man in a hospital for having a broken nerve and you're telling me he doesn't have a nerve that's broken. And they go, well, that's how we describe something. And I went, what? Because the meta model itself is a very powerful tool. It's a tool that's designed to do one thing, solve problems. And if you understand it and you learn the meta model, and I hope Tony has taught you things because he was using it all over the place here. People would go, well, I have this, and he'd go, what specifically? Give me an example. All that comes from meta model training, whether you got it from John Grinder, me, or a book. Doesn't matter where you learn it. As a model itself, whatever goes in comes out and leads you down the path to problem resolution. In fact, I rewrote the first book I wrote as a book called Problem Solving and released it a few years ago. And to me, and I've, by the way, written 35 books over the years. That's how long I've been around. And none of them are really repeats of anything. Because I constantly wanted to be able to solve problems because I didn't like what happened to the end user in the field of psychology. They would come in with a fear, and after 4 years, they would have 18 fears, right? Now, that demonstrates to me they're not doing the right thing. Now, as a physicist, I worked in an R&D company. We measured success by whether things worked or not. I worked specifically in the field of optics. We made holograms and things like that, very technical work. Companies would come in and tell us where they were stuck. And basically, I would use the same tools I used with psychiatric patients to solve their problems. I did it with the military, designing programs. Both Tony and I worked on the pistol training, and we had a very interesting colonel in charge of it that put us things. We did sonar training. I worked with intelligence agencies, corporations, all using the same tools. Because personal problems and business problems in and of themselves are not different in nature. They're all based on our neurology. And if you can make a change that stays permanent. Now, in computer science, there's a thing called a Turing machine. And basically what a Turing machine means is that you store memory, you put a plate in at the cafeteria, and you put another one on and it goes down. It's push down storage. So that the first plate off is actually the last plate you put on. Memory works a little bit like this, even though it's holographic in nature. We all learn new phone numbers, and we put that phone number over the new one, and then we stop dialing the old number. And now most people don't even bother to remember things. They put it in their phone. If you lose your phone, you lose your friends. It's a risky business nowadays. So I had a glitch and I lost all my emails or something, and somebody goes, "Don't you have copies of that?" And somebody said, "It's probably in the cloud." And I went, "Okay, if you say so. It's a good place for it, because I can always write another contract. I don't need to remember everything, because I'm of the firm belief that the best thing about the past is that it's over." Brad, all that stuff you were doing with Tony, right? The one thing that every time you came back and started talking about the unpleasantness of the past, you were feeling bad, right? Now, I can make a prediction because I've been doing this for longer than you've been alive, right? Which is horrible to say, by the way. I used to be the youngest person in the room, not so much anymore. But when you think about those events in the past that brought you the emotions and brought you the guilt, is the picture life-size, larger than life? Larger than life. So it's like the Big Lobster, right? I want you to try something real quick. I want you to, what's your favorite color? Red. Pardon? Red. Okay, put a 2-inch red border around it and suddenly shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp. Blink it black and white. He doesn't need a microphone. I'll repeat anything that's important. Okay, did you do that? Okay, see, pattern interrupt. The only trouble with pattern interrupts is they don't last. You keep having to interrupt them over and over again. Okay, big, larger than life memory. Put a border around it, a red border. Okay, once you have the red border, shrink it down, size of a postage stamp, and then go white, black, and go really fast. You got it? Okay. Now I want you to try and go back and feel bad about it. Oops. Okay, that's called neurological change. Okay. See, if the best thing about the past is that it's over, you have to do something with it. You were running those neurons that led to the bad feeling, and then it would circle around until it habituated, because every nerve will habituate. See, in fact, there's a woman named Dorothy Kimura. She's a neurologist. And in 1972, I stumbled across a journal article written in some neurological journal, and your eyes vibrate all the time like this. And the reason they do that is if they held still, the nerves would habituate in your brain. So your eyes have microscopic jiggling all the time. So being ever the scientist she was, she attached a picture on a thing to the eyeball, to both eyeballs, a little picture, and people would look at it, and then it would go and disappear because it wasn't hitting a different nerve. And once the nerve habituates, it just stops doing what it's doing. And then she asked them, she said, what was it a picture of? And to her surprise, 85% of the population stopped and looked up and to the left. Now, when I read that journal article, I went, that's very interesting. So I went to my class at the university. I had 300 people, and I said, what color are your mother's eyes? And everybody looked up and to the left, except the people with the watch on this arm. They were left-handed. And that's where accessing cues came from, that little chart that was on the beginning of that movie, which tells you things. Now, when I saw Virginia work, I went back and looked at Virginia. I noticed that Virginia did something, that when people walked up, she would go, what do you want? She, not consciously, but unconsciously, would watch the movement of their eyes and shift her predicates. So that with some people, she'd go, what do you see that you need? And with some people, they go, what do you feel is missing? And with some people, she goes, what do you tell yourself the problem is? And by switching from one representational system to another, she was able to communicate better because it tells you about the consciousness of the person you're dealing with. I knew you were making pictures larger than life because when you'd stop and go, and Tony would say, so when you think about what you were guilty about, and you would look up, whatever it was wasn't that big. You know, that if you observe people, most of the time you can tell. Now, I know that what he did changed your attitude and would propel you into the future. But if the past isn't holding you back, you're going to go faster because you will be able to line up both your conscious and unconscious activity to go in the same direction. And when you don't have those two lined up, then you start tripping over your own toes. You start going in the direction, and then doubts and fears start coming, and you keep having to push them away and do it by force of will, which is great, but you don't need to if you know how your brain works. My job was to figure out how you use consciousness. Now, Tony was talking about what you focus on. Okay, to me, the conscious mind is like a flashlight in a dark room. It's shining on some things and not others. And if it's shining in the right place, then you'll go the right direction. If you're trying to find your way out of a door and you're shining it on the ceiling, you're never going to get out. You'll bang into everything. And the trick with a lot of the meta model is to get you to focus on the right direction. Tony got you to focus on the right direction. Now, I want you to think about what would be difficult for you to do at this point. Because you were optimistic. But did it seem easy, what you were about to do? Does it now? Pardon? Yeah. Okay, because all you did was take that layer of neurons and put something over the top of it. Instead of going and habituating and then starting it over again, that's why it was hard to do it. That's why people always go, well, I can't really do it right now. You know, I get people who are terrified of elevators, and then we ride up and down, and they go, I think my phobia is tired today, because they can't justify things happening that quickly. But it's easier to change something quickly than it is to do it slowly. I'm sorry? Oh, speedboat. Okay, great. As long as it's not going to land on the ceiling, I'm fine. This is the first time I've taught in a tent since I worked for Tony years ago. He had a huge tent out in the back of a hotel with 2,000 people in it. And I believe he was marrying them all when I showed up. I don't know exactly what that was about, but he had somebody marrying them for a day so that they would learn to control their finances and things. At least that's what he said. Anyway, in my work over the years, I've taken project by project. I did a phobia project. I did things about anxiety. Then I started going through mental hospitals and listening to what doctors said with me. For example, I had a client, there's actually a film out about a client I had, and these two psychiatrists said to me, you know, this guy is incurable. And I said, how could you possibly know that? You know, that's what they said about smallpox. They've said that about everything. They said it was impossible to go to the moon. All progress is impossible until you do it, as far as I can tell. And believing that you can't do something is the slowest way to go about doing research, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing easier to change than a belief itself. Because if you change what you believe, then it makes it easier for you to look at the future and not the past. You know, the fact that something hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. It only means it hasn't been done. And when you let yourself imagine the future and all the possibilities, given that you've got billions and billions of neurons that could be directed in any direction. All they need is that focus, the flashlight shining on the right light. And especially when you build up a threshold that says, you know, you can do things, and you look at what you've accomplished in your life rather than what you haven't accomplished. Now, I want to try a little experiment with all of you. You up for an experiment? Yes. Okay, put your feet on the floor if you would. And for some of you, that's easier than others. I've got that stool out of the way because I noticed Tony was touching the floor and her legs were only about halfway down. And Tony is a foot taller than me, so I have my psychiatrist couch here. So when I want to psychoanalyze somebody, I can bring them up here. And only I don't psychoanalyze very well. I go straight for the unconscious and find out what it wants and get it done. Anyway, put your feet on the floor and take a breath real quick in through your mouth, really deep. Go. Hold it for a second and slowly let it out through your nose and just relax. Okay, another quick breath. Slowly let it out through your nose. Just relax. Now wiggle your toes and smile from your toes up to your mouth, so that you go all the way up your legs, all the way across your chest. And you have to show teeth or it doesn't count. My wife taught me that. Okay. You have just smiled and felt good for absolutely no reason. Isn't that cool? I mean, that's a cool thing. If you can be happy for no reason, imagine if you start having reasons and start thinking about the things that you accomplish. But if you don't do it with your whole body, then it's not going to really have the impact. Now, I had an opera singer that came to me, a quite famous opera singer. I'm not allowed to mention their name. Most of my clients who are rich, I'm not allowed to mention their names. But this guy was very famous, and he told me, he goes, well, he said, you know, I'm really motivated when I'm on stage, but I cannot get myself to practice. And I said, really, what's the difference? And he stopped and he went, well, he goes, when I'm on stage, and he began to make this gesture. He goes, everything just flows out. But when I look at the sheet music to practice, I just can't get myself to do it. And so I went back to neurology and I started looking at the difference between what's called the anthemic nervous system. This is all of the hollow and solid organs and the connections between them, your intestines, and they go up through your old brain onto your kinesthetic cortex, which overlaps about 40 or 50% with the visual cortex, right? And I started thinking, well, if you could do this on purpose, because if you think of something that you want to do, all right now, just pick something that you want to do. Is there somebody in here that has let me ask you this. Is there somebody in here that has a memory they think about too much every day? Something that annoys you, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, a couple minutes there. You do? How do you pronounce your name again? Aracel. Okay. And so if you were to add up 2 minutes and 5 minutes or 3 minutes here and there, would it add up to 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? How much a day? I'm sorry, can't hear you. 30 minutes a day. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot. Really, that's just north of 150 hours a year. Of course, 10 years, that's 1,500 hours. And in 40 years, that's 6,000 hours that you're planning to think this thought and feel bad. Does that sound smart? No, it doesn't. Would you like to do something about it? Okay, why don't you come up here and sit next to me? I'm going to need you to hold the microphone. Okay. She's going to be busy. Okay. So if she talks, you put the microphone in front of her mouth, right about here. Okay. Okay. Because I'm old, a little deaf. I'm like an old dog. But once I get a hold of a bone, I just don't fucking let go. Okay. See, we're talking about her having 6,000 hours. Okay. In the next 40 years that she could do anything she wanted with. Just think about that. That's a lot of fucking time. 6,000 hours to become more successful, to become more intelligent, to read, to have sex. There are all kinds of things you could do with 6,000 hours. People are always complaining to me, I don't have enough time. And then I find out they waste so much of it. I go, how much time do you spend worrying a day, about all kinds of stuff that, you don't do anything about? And it adds up. Some people, it's 2-3 hours a day. She's talking about 30 minutes, but that's just one idea. Okay, so when you think about this idea, okay, whatever it is, you don't have to tell us. I'm not that kind. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a voyeur of the mind. I don't care what it is. I just want you to tell me where it is. When you think about it, where in your visual field would you say it is? The point.
In my visual field.
Yeah. Well, you know what you're thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where is it? So it's here.
It's down.
Okay. And how big would you say it is? Is it the size of a cell phone, or is it bigger than a cell phone? Is it
It's a little bigger than a cell phone.
a little bigger? So you have this picture down there, and when you look at this little picture, you feel bad.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And when you look at this picture, do you say things to yourself at the same time, or
Yes.
and is that voice on the right or the left?
It's on the right.
Pardon?
On the right.
It's on the right.
Yeah.
And is it a pleasant voice?
No.
Okay, so you make a crappy picture and you talk to yourself in a crappy voice, and mysteriously you end up feeling bad.
Yes.
Does that sound smart to you?
No.
Okay. All right, we're going to try a little experiment here. I'm going to turn around, and all I want you to do is look at me. You don't need this for a second. Okay, just turn around. You just need to turn your head. You don't have to turn your whole body. You may not want to turn your whole body, trust me. Okay, just look me in the eye. I want you to take a deep breath when I do. Let it out slowly. And I'm going to look you in the eye, and I'm going to start to alter my state of consciousness, and you're going to go with me. Here we go. That's it. Your peripheral vision will begin to tunnel a little bit. And here we go. We're going to go really deeper now. That's right. You can go up a little bit, and now down, back down. That's it. Here we go. Deeper and deeper and deeper still. Now just close your eyes, and I'm going to lift up your arm, and it's going to go stiff like that, and it's just going to stay there. And it's going to go down at the rate and speed at which you go into a deep, relaxed state, because I want your unconscious to be on your side in all things. I want your unconscious, which is close enough to listen to me, to understand that when your hand touches your knee, something really funny is going to happen. You're going to look at that picture, and it's going to seem so freaking ridiculous that you're just not going to be able to stop laughing. They say laughter is the best medicine, and they say you're going to look back and laugh, and my policy is why wait. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Bigger laughter. Double it. Double it again. All right, look at that picture. The more you look at it, the funnier it's going to become. This has been sucking the moments of your life out of you. Because when you talk to yourself in bad voices and you make pictures that make you feel bad, it takes up the currency of living. The currency of living is how you spend your moments. That's all there is to it. And when you waste those moments and throw them away, instead of make rational decisions about it. Now, since you're laughing about it, and that feels better, you might as well wiggle your toes and laugh all the way up, right? Now, what I want you to do is to realize I'm going to lift up your arm one more time. Only this time you're going to go deep and really relax. 1, 2, really relax. All the way down. Let your head fall. Just let yourself relax. That's it. Deeper, deeper, and deeper, and deeper still. Now, while your unconscious is listening to me, I have a suggestion. As a hypnotist, I have many of them. My suggestion is that you think of something better to do, something that would make your life wonderful, something that would make it something that you really desire to accomplish, something that would be a challenge. And that you take it and you take that little tiny picture that's been annoying you, you shrink it down to a dot, and you replace it with that picture, only you make it so big that it's as big as this tent that we're in. and you look at it, and I want you to wet your lips. Because desire comes from neurology. Oddly enough, the lips take up a third of the motor cortex. So when you wet your lips with desire, it changes your physiology. It tells your cortex to desire things. Now, I want you also to go back and look at that evil little picture for the last time. And I want you to take a deep breath and sigh. Sighing is the neurological equivalent of being finished. When you have a big meal and you're full, you push away and you sigh. When you have vigorous sex, when you're done panting, you sigh. There are all kinds of things that we do. When you run in a race and you're done being things, you sit on the ground and you take a deep sigh. When people see something exciting at the movies, and when it's over, the whole audience will sigh together with relief, because it's the neurological equivalent of being done and finished. Then you pull up your fancy new picture and you smile, and you double that smile, and you double it again, and you take the ability to have voices in your head in the same place, replace it with a better voice that says, I can do this now that I have the time. I have all the time in the world. This is just one bad idea. You could do this with 1,000. And now, I'm going to reach over and I'm going to touch you on the knee, and you're going to come out of this nice, pleasant, relaxed state like a rocket ship. You're going to have this overwhelming sense of motivation. And just like he had a feeling that went in a circle that got stronger, your feelings are going to get stronger, because you're going to want to do this and accomplish these things and get things done for the rest of your life. 1, 2, 3, zip, all the way up. Thank you so much, dear. Now, when I did this kind of stuff in 1970, psychiatrists looked at me like I came from the frickin' moon, right? I would go into mental hospitals. And by the way, according to things that were written by psychiatrists, for psychiatrists, schizophrenics can't be hypnotized. Okay, so this guy comes to me and he goes, my brother is in a mental hospital. The doctors have been medicating him. Every time I go to see him, he's worse. And do you think you can help him? And I said, well, why is he in a mental hospital rather than at your house? And he said, well, because people come off the TV and follow him around. And I thought, cool, I'd like to do that. Right? And so his 2 psychiatrists arranged for me to see him. They filmed it in Colorado because they were scientists and they wanted proof, and apparently videotape is proof. And they told me before I started, they said, look, I had very long hair at the time. It seems to have disappeared and comes out of my nose now. But at the time, I had very long hair. They said, you're going to have to put your hair under a hat because long hair freaks him out. And I went, right, don't have long hair. And they said, and don't touch him because he will freak out. And I said, right. And they said, and you can't hypnotize him because he's schizophrenic. And I went, right. And he walked in the room, I grabbed his hand, and I put him into a trance. And he seemed to be fine. Apparently, he didn't read the rules, so he didn't know how to follow them. But then I sat him down, and I asked him a question. I said, so they told me that people come off the TV and follow you around. And I said, who specifically? Right out of the meta model. And he said, have you ever seen Little House on the Prairie? This is some decades ago, and it was still on TV then. And he said, you know that little bitch Mary? And I said, well, not personally, but I have a feeling I'm going to meet her soon. And he said, yeah. And then there was a list. There was a televangelist, and he went down this list of horrible people that came and followed him around. And he would turn around and argue with them, and then they would arrest him and put him in a mental hospital. And then they would medicate him, because that's what you do. When people are hallucinating, you would give them more drugs. Makes perfect sense to me. You know, if you're not taking enough drugs, then you'll hallucinate floridly. And it says to me, he goes, they said, I said to him, I said, they told me you were schizophrenic. I'm really confused. You don't seem schizophrenic to me. And he goes, well, he goes, but I see people. And I said, right. I said, the problem isn't that you're seeing people. I said, it's that you're watching the wrong TV shows. And this schizophrenic looks at me and says, what do you mean? And I said, have you heard about the Playboy channel? In an instant, this light went on in his eye, like bing. But then I told him, I said, have you ever watched Bugs Bunny? And he said, yeah. I said, do you remember the cartoon where Bugs, right, is yelling at the artist, and the artist erases his legs, and Bugs gets really mad, and then the artist erases it. And he goes, yeah. And I said, can you see a TV here? Well, he hallucinates floridly. They wouldn't let me have a TV. They thought it was too dangerous, you know, because TVs are what causes the schizophrenia. Anyway, so I had him hallucinate a TV. He was in trance, and I had him watch the Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I pulled the pencil out of it and handed him the pencil. And when he took the pencil, I told him to go around and erase Mary's head, and then erase the other person, so he could take control of his hallucinations. And for some reason, that seemed to work. And later on, his brother called me and said that they were out in public, and every once in a while he would pull out his pencil and erase something. But apparently it was better than taking narcotics and being incarcerated for being stupid. You know, that you're not supposed to watch people come off the TV and follow you around. It's supposed to stop at the screen. You know, although I went and saw The Exorcist, which, by the way, I thought was the funniest movie I have ever seen. Right. And apparently that made me inappropriate in the theater. I literally part of the way through was asked to leave because I couldn't stop laughing. That line, nice day for an exorcism, I just thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. But then I didn't grow up very religious, and apparently the people in the theater did, and it scared the piss out of them. The 5 people that went to the theater with me went back to my house afterwards and sat in the living room, and they all looked freaking terrified. And I said to one of them, I said, what's the matter? And he goes, I can't stop thinking about that movie. And I said, really? Because we went and saw it on a really big screen. You know, they had just started making these humongous screens in theaters. And, one kid that was a musician I played with said to me, he goes, he says, I keep seeing that girl. And he goes, I'm afraid she's going to come tonight when I'm asleep. And I said, so you went to the theater and saw a scary movie, scared the shit out of yourself, and you're coming home to practice, and now you're giving yourself suggestions about when you're going to hallucinate this and scare the piss out of yourself later. Good plan. To me, the brain is designed to plan. It's designed to remember, and you should remember what worked, and you should remember what doesn't work. Psychiatrists told me, and psychotherapists told me, and I do love the name Psycho, the rapist. That's a great name. It says it right on their door. That for me, that when I see this kind of stuff over the years, I worked with a whole bunch of educationally handicapped kids once. I helped a principal of a school, got a stroke, and lost his speech and his movement, and I helped him recover both. And so he said, do you think you could do something with learning disabled kids? And I'd never heard the term before. And I said, I'm sorry, you mean brain damaged? And he said, no, they're learning disabled. And I said, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so they introduced me to somebody called a learning disabled counselor. Just think about the name. You know, it's right on the door, learning disabled counselor. So when I went in, I went, hello, how are you? And this woman went, why are you shouting? And I said, just trying to be clear. I said, you're the learning disabled counselor? And she said, no. She goes, I work with learning disabled kids. And I said, like what? So they gave me 5 fifth graders, and they read these big files on them. And there was one they said was crossed hemisphered. And I said, so when you x-ray the brain, the flat part is on the outside and the curves go in? And they went, no. They go, it's just a diagnosis. And I went, well, what does it represent? What can this kid not do? Or what does he do that he's not supposed to? Because there are really only 4 choices. You're either doing something you're not supposed to, or you're not doing something you are supposed to, or you don't even suspect what's going on. There are relative possibilities. You either want something and you don't have it, you don't have something that you want, right? Or you want something and you have it, or you don't want it and you don't have it, but you probably need it. I mean, those are the four major categories of all my work. And when I look at things, I try to figure out what I have to plug into those boxes, tells me what to do. She said to me, she goes, well, all 5 of them are spelling at a 2nd grade level. And I went, grade level? I said, who made this stuff up? Right? And she goes, it's required by the state of California. And I went, ooh, you know, the state of California, this is a state that's now $17 billion in debt. They spent $17 billion they don't have, and it's just proposed to spend $700 million on reparations, right? And, you know, all of the slaves are dead, by the way. Are they going to pile money on their graves? I'm confused about that. No, they're going to do genetic testing. They're going to hire and set up labs to genetically test you, which means they're going to have to dig up all these slaves to find out. So they're, you know, this is a complicated business, so they can figure out who to give money to that they don't have when they're closing schools and people are starving. Tony's feeding them, for heaven's sakes, right? They go, Tony, you take over feeding people. We're going to be testing dead people in the ground to find out who we owe money to. You know, my memory is I owed money to a person once who got killed in a car wreck. I didn't have to pay him back after that. That's my memory, you know. That's called practical and intelligent, you know. I didn't go to his gravesite and go, here's your $200, right? And stick a little rose through it into the ground, you know. Some people said I should have given it to his family, but he didn't have one. So what are you going to do? You know, but I could have found, if I did enough genetic testing on him, I could have found somebody. I could have spent thousands of dollars to figure out who to give the 200 to. But that's how the mind of some people works. I try to go for the easy result. So with these kids, I got a list of what they couldn't do. They were in the wrong level of mathematics. Right? These are only 5th graders, for heaven's sakes. I mean, we're not talking complicated shit, you know. They didn't add, and they said they can't multiply correctly. And they don't do long division, which is confusing because there is no such thing as long division, by the way. In the universe, when you divide things, nothing is ever left over. That's not how it works in the real universe. As a physicist, we know this. Long division is a disguised way of doing multiplication and subtraction. And, you know, but they don't teach it to you that way. It would make it too easy. Everybody would get good grades. So I made a big chart. I sat down with these kids. They came in the first day, and I said, look, I'm going to take you for an hour a day. And I said, do you know why you're here? And this little girl says, because we're stupid. And I said, that's right. But you're not as stupid as I am. I am the stupidest person who ever went through school. So what I'm going to do is teach you to cheat in a way where you never get caught. And one of them looked at me and said, how can you do that? And I said, well, you try to write things on your hand or have a piece of paper. I said, anybody can find that. I'm going to teach you how to put stuff in your head where no one can see it and make it so you can pull it up whenever you want. And I said, I'm going to do something that your teachers don't do. And I gave them a list of numbers. It went 1 to 100 and 1 to 100 and all the combinations therein on a piece of paper. And I said, I want you to start, and we're all going to do 3. And just go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 as fast as you can and find out who gets to the end first. And I kept doing the numbers. I did that for 15 minutes. And then I went, 3 times 9, and they went 27. Right? We just did this for 15 minutes a day for 1 week. Spelling, I taught them how to hide words in their head. Well, that's where they need to be hidden. Right. I found somebody who won a spelling bee. She was a smart-ass little girl. She knew how to spell everything. And she won the spelling bee. And so I went and asked her, I said, how do you spell illogical? And she started to bark out the letters like a seal. And I said, no. I said, I didn't ask you that. I said, don't answer out loud. Just tell me if you know how to spell it. She went, yes. And she kept doing this, And I said, where's the word in your head? And she goes, it's right here. I said, how big are the letters? She went like this, right? And I said, how did they get there? And she goes, well, when I look at a word in the dictionary, I put the word or the spelling list up letter at a time, right? And then I say the word, and then I say it in a sentence, and then I put it aside and make sure when I say the word, it comes back up by itself. Well, they didn't teach me to do that in school. They taught me to spell phonetically, which oddly enough, you can't spell phonetically unless you live in Ireland or Germany. But you certainly can't do it in this country, because English is the language that witches have made. I before E except after C. Long vowels, short vowels, silent letters. How do you pronounce a silent letter? Crazy ass stuff. But when I taught the kids to do this for an hour a day, so I taught them math, I taught them that, and then I taught them to have a memory castle so that they had a place to put dates for memorizing dates of things, and a place to put different things that the teacher would teach you or anything she wrote on the blackboard so they could put it away and pull it back up. And then they went in, and at the end of the week, the teacher gave them a spelling test. And they all got really good grades. They got all of them because she gave me the 10 spelling tests for the year. And they weren't that difficult of words. And I had started out with harder words and then went to easier ones because it's still, a word is one picture. It's not longer letters don't mean it's a harder word. It just means it's you have to make the picture a little bigger so you can see the letters clearly. And they all got really good grades. And then the teacher said, I don't know how you did this, but you need to read this, and gave me a copy of the New Testament. Because she said, whatever you're doing has to have something to do with Satan. Because you don't teach kids to spell quickly. The truth is, all of you learn faster if you learn quickly and more permanently. If I put stick figures on a deck of cards and flip them in front of you, you'll see a basketball player bounce the basketball and throw it in a hoop. If I handed you one a week for a year, you would have no idea what happened. The brain learns by patterning itself. The fact that ideas run through your mind quickly is what makes them work. By making that picture and shrinking it down and blinking it black and white, your brain learned not to think about it the way you were because you left it intact. And the minute you put a border around it, you moved it from one hemisphere to another. So you neurologically changed the idea. I love the way you guys are writing this stuff down. Now you're going to have to read your notes and understand them. That's going to be complicated. I have this in books. You can read this stuff. It's really easy. You can go online and download them and stuff. I wrote a book called Using Your Brain for Change that tells you how to get over phobias and do this stuff. I wrote a book about education that tells you all this stuff. It's all written down, and mostly it's being bootlegged all over the place. There are all kinds of people doing NLP. In fact, now to become an NLP person, really all you need is a printer. You can say, I'm an NLP trainer. That's why we have licensed, because, we have trademarks on things. In fact, when they told Tony he couldn't do NLP, I certified him and said, come after me, Well, he's spreading information to everybody. I don't care if he's sticking his own stuff in it. Everybody does that. I did that. This wasn't my idea. I found all this stuff in people's heads in neurology journals. I just put it in a package which made it more learnable to people because I wanted to change the idea that insight produced change, because it's not a viable thing. Somebody falls in a creek, right? And they end up with the phobia of water. They're now 35 or 40 years old, and they can't swim, and they can't take a bath. And the psychiatrist brings them to me, and they go, well, the root cause of the problem, we're still exploring. I'm having him relive the trauma from his childhood. And I'm going, well, excuse me, if he could learn to be terrified in 30 seconds, then why should it take longer for him to learn to go into the water and learn to swim? It just doesn't make sense. If the brain can learn quickly, it can learn quickly. And the idea that, these traumatic effects of sure, your life history influenced you, but it doesn't control you. And it shouldn't control you. That's not the nature of learning for human beings. Tony was having people that have problems with their business. Is there somebody in here who's got another one? Give him the microphone. He's gonna tell me about his problem. What's your problem, sir? One problem. Tony says you're supposed to think good things. Think it's a good thing I haven't hit you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Now let's move on. So what's the difficulty?
I think that sometimes I get tired during the day, and
I'll tell you a trick. Hold the microphone here.
Thank
like
you
that,
very
and-
much, Richard.
Okay, you don't have to look at it. The sound will fall in it. Okay.
Sometimes I get tired during the day, and I
So
think that it's something that I keep triggering in thought.
Yeah, you think so?
I do.
Okay. And so what if I was going to fill in for you a day and get tired in your behalf?
I would love that.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Temporary help is hard to find.
It's definitely hard to find,
Okay.
especially for this.
What would I have to
phobia.
do to make myself tired in the middle of the day?
It just comes on.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it
Just
seems
is
to.
that magic word. Whenever you hear somebody say the just, it translates to the word only, and it isn't. It just means you're not conscious of it yet. Okay. So do you have to say something to yourself to have that feeling, or do you think something?
I definitely think it. I think it's time.
You think? What do you mean?
I just assume it's coming because it's come so many times, and I figure it's coming. After a couple hours, I start to get a little tired.
And so when you assume it, do you tell yourself this? Or
I'm definitely having a conversation going, here it comes again.
okay, and do you hear the voice coming out of your mouth, or do you hear it coming from the side, or
I
is
think
it
it's
talking
coming
towards you?
inside my head, and
Well, I get it's inside your head because
Yeah.
I can't hear it. Okay, but is it coming toward? Does it sound like it's coming towards you, or coming out of you, or?
it feels like an inside thought. So
Well,
I'm not necessarily aware of which direction it's coming from, to be honest, at this
Okay,
moment.
well, if I'm going to do it for you, you're going to have to be more clear about this.
Okay.
Okay, so try to make yourself tired right now. What would you have to do?
I would probably just assume it was coming. And
Okay, now when you assume it's coming, what do you do? What would I have to do to assume that something is coming? Because you could assume that you're going to light up with motivation and have a great fucking day. That would be a possibility.
That'd be a damn good replacement.
Okay, well, I'm working on it.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, but I have to know where the assumption machine is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely coming in from inside my head. It feels like it's from this side.
Okay, so does it feel like it's going out of your head or into your head?
It might feel like it's swirling. Shit, I don't know, Richard, at this moment.
Well, try them both and find out which one fits.
Okay. There I go up to the left, huh? You saw that.
Yeah, I did.
I did. I noticed it too.
Every single time. Okay. So you make a little picture, okay, and what's in the picture?
I just start to feel like I'm going to start yawning and
Okay.
dozing off.
Okay, and do you see yourself dozing off in the picture?
No, it's a feeling.
Okay, well, yeah, I know you feel it, but the question is, how do you know when to feel it? You have to have something that tells you what to do. Okay, I mean, you know which way the feeling goes. Okay, and if it went faster, you'd probably get more tired.
I just start to get tired.
Okay,
I start to get I start getting foggy in my thoughts, and I go, okay, let me go clear my mind. Let me go rest for 10 minutes.
okay, and if you get foggy in your thoughts, what does that look like? Does that mean your pictures aren't clear?
It just means that I'm not thinking clearly, and I'm not.
But you're okay. If you were thinking clearly, what would it look like?
I'd be wide awake.
No, that's what would happen. You said it. You're not thinking clearly. Thinking.
I almost feel like there's a fog coming into my brain.
Right. Okay. And does it look like a fog?
It does.
Okay. So you have pictures that you normally look at that you can see clearly. Mm-hmm. And then you have this fog come in front of it.
Yeah, it does. It does seem like a little dust cloud coming in to fuck things up.
Little dust cloud coming
Yeah.
in. Okay. And how do you get rid of dust in your house?
Sweep it up.
Okay, that's one approach. That's very old school.
Okay.
Okay. In the modern
Vacuum.
in modern society, how do we do it?
Well, I mean, yeah. Get a vacuum, or
You could have a vacuum. They have these magic cloths you can wipe your
Yeah, that's
TV or your
true.
computer screen with.
yeah.
Okay. Now, if you look at a cloudy thought, Can you wipe it away on purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good idea. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you wipe it away, do you feel clearer?
Well, I'm not feeling it right now, but okay. I'll do it
Okay.
next time.
I don't believe you.
Oh, I will.
I still don't believe you.
Oh, I will.
Yeah. You.
Sure as I know that's a beautiful tie, I will do it.
Okay. Well, that's a good promise. Let's try something a little simpler.
Okay.
I'm going to put my hand on top of your hand. I'm going to take this microphone. Boy, you people jump up. I need to hire new help. That's what I learned here. Come to a Tony Robbins or something. I need more responsive people. I'm going to lift my hand up, and I want you to lift your hand at the same rate. Okay? Okay, because I want to teach you a little bit about altering your state on purpose. So that, because there's cool things you can do. When you go into an altered state, one of the things you can do is time distortion, right? And this happens naturally all the time. Something starts to roll off of a table and you grab it without even thinking about it, because instead of it looking like it's going off fast, you slow time down. You do it in a car, something moves in the road and you slow down time for a few minutes and go around it. Time distortion is a natural thing that people do. You go to the airport and a minute takes an hour when you're waiting in line. That's the wrong kind of time distortion. Now, when I lift my hand up, I want you to just make sure your hand continues to touch mine. That's right. And we're just going to relax together. That's right. One more double blink. That's right. Here we go. That's right. A little deeper. Now take a breath in through your mouth. Slowly let it out of your nose and just relax and let go of all that tension. And let your hand continue to go up and just stop right there. Now I'm going to put my hand on your shoulder. This is called stress, okay? And that tight muscle is going to suddenly relax the minute my hand relaxes. There we go. You can do this on purpose. Feelings aren't what happened to us. Feelings are the byproduct of what we do. And if you soften your skin, the muscle underneath it softens. If you stiffen your arm like this and sleep, just relax and go down and relax even deeper and deeper still. Let it all go for a moment, because I want a total refresh button in your head. We all need little buttons in our head that remind us of things. If we work really hard and we focus our attention really intensely and we don't ever get a break, then we'll start to fatigue. But if you know how to relax, that's right. Just relax that. Get every little ounce of, that's right. See that little knot there? That's going to disappear now. That's right. And all I'm doing is putting my hand, I finger on a knot in a muscle. Then I tighten the rest of my hand. And when I relax my hand, the knot goes away, because the skin tells the muscles what to do. And when you reach for a glass, your arm extends out. When the hand touches the glass, every muscle relaxes and you reverse the process. See, it's one of those cool things. It's like when I worked with biofeedback, one of the things I did was to teach biofeedback people not to measure where people are, but to measure where they were going and how fast they were getting there. Because when you get one of those biofeedback machines and you start to relax and you go, I'm going to relax, and then it goes, and then you go, oh, well, and then it goes, and it tells you where you are. It doesn't tell you where you're going. Now, if you take the same calculations and you measure the speed with which you're going into alpha, so that you take actually the second mathematical derivation, what happens is people learn it really quickly, because it's how the brain works. When you reach for something, it's slow at first and fast at the end. When you take food into your mouth, it's slow until you get near your mouth, and it's quicker, because the more you zero in on a target. Your target here is to feel refreshed. And when you come out of this state in a few moments, you're going to, for a few seconds, you're going to push a little button in your mind. We're going to put a little button in there that says on it, refresh. Okay? And when you have that button, I want you to just nod yes so that I know. Okay. Now, we're going to hook that up so that when I touch your hand, the refresh button's going to go in, so you could press it anytime you want. and the fog is going to clear. Your mind's going to get crystal clear beyond belief. You're going to come out of this relaxed state like a rocket ship with a sense of enthusiasm and excitement. You're going to feel great, and you're going to smile. Because if you don't smile, it ain't worth it. Trust me, you got to learn to smile, especially at the crap, because if you don't, it will haunt you your whole life. You'll end up wasting tens of thousands of fucking hours about something that's really silly, especially when you think about it. I had a 60-year-old woman come in to me, right? I'm 27 years old. And she goes, I can't stop fighting with my mother. And I said, did you bring her? And she goes, my mother died 50 years ago. And I said, so you're talking to dead people? Because I saw somebody do that yesterday, and I know it can be done. And she goes, of course not. It's all in my head. She goes, I have the same arguments we had when I was a kid. And I said, and you do this, do they pay you to do this? And she went, no, I don't get paid to do it. And I said, well, does it sound smart? Because if you're fogging up when you should be working, then you need a moment where you go in and totally refresh yourself. So I'm going to count to 3 and squeeze your wrist. And when I do, that button's going to go down. You're going to smile. Your nervous system is going to light up. You're going to feel clear, crystal clear, super refreshed. And you're going to do it 1, 2, 3, now. Thank you. I'm just kind of sampling through things that I've done over the years. And anyway, I thought I'd have a few moments and see if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
What if you know you should do it and you still talk yourself into not doing it, like exercise?
What if, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
I'll wake up at 5 in the morning, all determined.
Me personally, what if I don't do it and I can't talk to myself? Are we talking about you or me?
Me.
Oh, okay. Oh, so this is the intellectual we. Well, the first thing to do is start talking about yourself instead of me.
Correct.
Because I take insults personally. And I may be old, but I'm still fucking lethal.
I can see that. It's evident.
Oh, okay. I thought you were insulting me because I would never do that to me. Now, I don't know why you do, but when you say what if, are you really asking me how to stop this?
How to stop this?
Okay, well, why don't you sit down and talk to me for a minute? Or you could just stand there and equivocate.
No. Go ahead. So long as you don't make me jump like a bunny rabbit out here.
Ooh, that's tempting. Poke the hypnotist. That's smart.
Not that I'm trying to plant it in your brain, but...
Yeah, it's there now. What am I going to do about it? So let me ask you, you have to hold that up to your mouth when you talk.
Sure.
Okay.
This way.
You're not talking now, but when you talk, you have to do that. Okay. So let me get this clear. There's stuff that you know that you want to do, but you talk yourself out of it?
Correct.
Okay. And
If there's a different reason, then I don't talk myself. If I have to catch a plane, it will be caught. And if I have to run for it, I'll run for it.
Okay.
But if I have to run on a boring treadmill, ain't happening.
Oh, you mean how to get yourself to do stuff that's good for you, but you don't, it's not fun. Tony was talking about that maintenance stuff, right? Because I go to the gym and pick up shit that's way too fucking heavy and put it down and then pick it up again. It seems really fucking pointless to me.
Correct.
But I like the effect, right? See, if you think short term and you go, do I want to go to the gym? Really, the answer is no. Do I want to pick this up? No. Do I want to run on the treadmill? No. But the question is, do you want to live a long time and be healthy?
Sure.
Right. If you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. Right. Now, if you picture, how old are you now?
59.
59. Okay. So do you want to be old and feeble?
Negative.
Like at 62?
Negative.
Negative. Okay. So you have to make a plan. Okay. And that plan has to include some maintenance, and it has to include some rewards. And you have to see yourself as being a different person than you are. You're the one that doesn't go to the gym. Now, the gym I go to, they sell 100 gym memberships, and probably 3 of us show up, right? They make a lot of money, but nobody ever is there. It's always empty. And, part of the reason I go is because I don't want to disappoint my trainer. And, I set up a schedule, but part of what gets me to do it is because my wife said to me one day, you need exercise. And part of it was she got me to be able to walk again because I had a stroke, and they literally told me I'd never walk again. They said, they brought me MRIs to prove it to me just so that I wouldn't try. And they showed me pictures, and they brought in a wheelchair and told me it was going to be my new best friend. And I looked at them and I said, there's nobody in that chair. And they said, you're going to spend your life in a chair like this. And I said, oh, yeah? And I swung my legs around and stood up. I have to admit, I was mostly leaning against the bed, but I just didn't like the idea of being helpless. Now, do you like the idea of being helpless and not things? Do you want your lungs to get clawed? Do you want all those bad things to happen? Or do you have a vision of yourself being healthier than you are now?
I do.
You do. Okay. What is it? Far off in the distance, or
It's far away, out of reach.
how far?
Maybe somewhere towards the end of the room, but not further.
So you have a plan, but it's like somewhere across the fucking room.
Yeah, it's way outside of reach.
Okay. And so you see yourself being healthy at some time in the far distant future. Are there any steps between that picture and you now?
Right now, I don't see a
The
path.
answer is no.
No.
Okay. I can see the pictures, and there's none in between. Okay. If you're not connected to your own desires, right? I mean, if you're going to cook a meal, right, do you go into the refrigerator and go, there's no chicken, how can I cook chicken? Or do you plan ahead of time and get the correct ingredients?
Plan ahead of time or go somewhere where there's chicken.
Okay. Right.
That's
Okay.
easier.
So that's called planning, right? This is a desire without planning. When you have a desire without planning, then it's hard to go for it. See, if you look at that picture off in the distance, to begin with, let's pull it a little closer. Let's pull it so that it's just beyond my hand.
Okay.
Okay. And then I want you to think, being the guy you are now, the weight you are now, the healthiest that you are now, from you to get from here to there, how much do you have to do, and where would you start?
I'll start now. And
Well, you can't start now. You're sitting in a chair next to me. You have to think, when I go home, do you have a treadmill at home?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you hang clothes on it or run on it?
No. I'll use it once a month at best.
Once a month. Okay. But how often do you think you would need to use it for you to get to that picture? By the way, when you look at that picture, do you desire it?
Oh yeah, it's yummy.
When you look at it, does it make you want to wet your lips and you're going to go, this is going to be me. This is going to be me in 6 months. This is going to be me in less than a year. This is going to be me soon. Does your brain do that?
Yes.
Okay. And when you look at it, is it life size?
Now it is a little bigger than life.
Okay, well, that's good. Bigger than life is great. Okay. And when you think, how many days a week are you going to use it?
Every day.
Every single day.
Maybe twice a day.
Pardon?
Maybe twice a day.
Well, I don't know. It depends. How long are you going to run on? More than one step?
No, I'll do until I sweat.
What?
Until sweat comes out. And I don't feel like, yes, I've done it.
Pardon?
I have to feel like I've given my bit to it and I feel good.
Okay. So is there anything that stops you from going home and doing this?
Nothing.
Nothing?
This guy.
Okay, well, except you. But what would make it so that that every time you looked at it, you felt like you wanted to do it? You said it's in your house, right? The only thing that would make you do it is desiring to become the guy in that picture.
Right.
Because there are terrible things that happen, You're going to be healthier, you know, you're going to be a better lover, you're going to have more sex, all kinds of things are going to happen if you start doing this. You know, I mean, I don't want to put any pressure on you right now, but you have to look at this and want it. Desire is what makes things possible. Tony lost everything. He talked about it. He was living in half a house, for Christ's sake, you know, and it was molding up, and, you know, and he had to have the desire that brought him so that we're sitting in this gigantic tent in his backyard, you know, and, you know, in order to do that, you have to be propelled. You know, is there anything that to you is irresistible?
Many things I want to achieve, they're irresistible, I'll do them.
You're
but
answering.
this-
You're answering the wrong question. Look at me. Look at me. I'm over here. Okay. Has there ever been anything in your life that nothing in the world would stop you from doing?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. When you think about that, are you proud of it?
very.
Okay. That has to be the same thing you do. You have to put this picture where that one was. Because at some time in your life you hadn't done this, but when you set your mind to it, you absolutely did it.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to bring this picture around so it's in the same fucking place, so that you go, no matter what happens, you can close your eyes now. I'll take this. And just go inside and desire it. And put it in the same place in your mind. Make it life size, and make it so when you look at it, you wet your lips and you go, I'm going to just fucking do this. I'm going to do it every day, and sometimes twice a day. And if I miss a day, I'll make up for the day, but I'm going to do it until I become the guy in that picture. And then I'm going to keep doing it so I stay that guy. I'm going to become healthier, and I'm not going to let anything get in my way. Now, take a deep breath in, and I'm going to touch you on the hand gently. I want your unconscious to answer me, because you've got to get lined up with your unconscious mind. See, your conscious mind knows better than this. It's telling you better than this. But old things in the past are in the way. So I'm going to touch this finger like that, and I want your unconscious to just slowly raise that finger to answer me yes. That's right. Let your hand go. I want an unconscious signal from your other mind. That's right. This finger, lift it up with honest unconscious movement. Now that's conscious movement. Honest unconscious movement. Let your unconscious do it. That's the stuff. There we go. And I'm going to ask your unconscious if it knows exactly what adjustments to make so that you will become relentless about this. You've been relentless about other things and accomplished them. This shouldn't be different. This is the time in life, because believe me, I had a time in life where I either would be dead by now or I would have changed my lifestyle so that I could learn to walk and learn to stand and learn to move and learn to do all those things the doctors said I couldn't. And it required tenacity. Your unconscious is tenacious. Your heart will beat 8 billion times in a lifetime. You will breathe in and out millions and millions and millions and millions of times. Your neurology, it balances your blood pressure. It does all of these things. It regenerates cells. It does all this marvelous stuff. It even has the ability to speak language that slows you down. And so what we want to do is to get a commitment from your unconscious that it will make the adjustments so that you line up everything, so that when you look at that treadmill, you become tenacious. That when you think about the foods that you eat, you become tenacious to have a healthier life, to live years and years with a big smile on your face and a sense of pride. Because the only thing in the way of that is your unconscious and you doing the same thing. So I want your unconscious to answer me yes, that it's willing to line up everything to make sure this happens. A full response. That's right. There we go. Now, I want your unconscious to put a big, shiny picture in your head, right? And when you see that picture, I want you to feel the desire to get some exercise. It's the desire. And if any voice comes up, it's going to sound stupid to you. You know what stupid sounds like. Stupid sounds like telling yourself that you're too busy to have a great life. I'm too busy to be happy. I'm too busy to kiss my wife. I'm too busy to do all the things that make life worth living, right? And, you know, if you ask somebody, do you want to shorten your life by 20 years? They never say yes, but yet they do the things that will lead them in that direction. The only reason I go to the gym is to be healthier, right? You know, it's not necessarily fun, but there's a lot of things in life you do that are not necessarily fun. We pay taxes, that's not fun, but we do it because it beats going to jail. There's a worse outcome, right? We don't want to end up in prison, right? I mean, you know, they're putting people in prison for just about everything nowadays, right? You know, they'll make shit up and put you in prison. But why would you want to imprison yourself and your body in a few years? Because you don't care enough about yourself. Your unconscious does, so put up a bright picture that's irresistible and say, ooh, I'm going to feel so wonderful because I'll have a sense of pride. Now, if you look at yourself in the picture being more fit and you see yourself being proud of yourself, I want you to just want to be that guy so much you can't stand it. I want you to be that guy so much it hurts, so you'll do anything to get it. That's what makes all of this work. Now, I'm going to touch you on the wrist. That picture is going to firmly lock in your mind. Your unconscious is going to keep its agreement with me. You're going to come out with an overwhelming sense of commitment, because sometimes we have to make deals with ourselves. There are a lot of stuff we have to do that we don't want to do, and some of it takes time. And when it takes time, the more you do it, the better you feel. The first step on the treadmill is the hardest. Everyone after that becomes easier, because if you stop, you'll fall off. But you got to get on every day. So 1, 2, 3, wake up, eyes open. Now, let me ask you this. How do you pronounce your first name? I'm sorry.
Puneet.
Polit?
Puneet.
Polit. Okay, Polit.
With the N. Puneet.
I know. Just because I see it doesn't necessarily mean I know how to pronounce it.
Ask your unconscious.
Trust me, I've been a lot of places and really mispronounced a lot of names over the years. So I try to be careful about that. I don't like to call people the wrong name. You know, their unconscious gets mad at me. It doesn't work out well. Okay, when you think about getting on the treadmill now, do you think you're going to do it?
I'm much more positive, but not determined yet.
Adamant?
Not determined yet.
Okay.
That's the feeling I'm getting right now.
Okay. What would
It's
it take?
better than
What would it take?
resistance
What would
is
it take
not-
to be determined?
I don't know if it's a carrot or a stick, but either of them.
Well, you got both. You don't get on the treadmill. You know, 5 years from now, you'll be a lot less healthy than you are now. Get on the treadmill, you'll be healthier. It seems rather black and white. Okay. And that's not enough carrot and stick with you, because I could make it so that if you don't do it, I come back next year and beat the crap out of you.
I'd love it.
Be more than happy to. I'm good at it. It's one of the things I learned in my childhood. I'm extremely good at, you know. But that seems ridiculous to me. It seems to me that you should want it so much that the idea of not doing it seems as stupid as it really is. Right? Whether you do it 3 times a week or 5 times a week or 7 days a week, doesn't matter. What matters is that you do it, and that the more you do it, the more you feel how good it makes you feel. Right? The first few times are always the worst. Trust me. When I first started going to the gym, when I first started walking, oh man, I can't tell you how much that hurt. Right? When I first started exercising and using muscles I'd never used, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and just going to pee was like an act of fucking God. You know, it was, you know, my legs killed me. But sometimes you know that in the long run, because you're not thinking about now, you're thinking about down the road. Are you married?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you think that it was all going to be fun and games getting married?
Initially, yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah. I thought it'll be fun and games.
Okay. Okay. You didn't think there would be any struggles at all?
They didn't come to my mind at that time.
At that time? Okay. Right. So you didn't think it through real clearly.
True.
Right. But was it worth it?
Totally.
Surely. Okay. Sometimes you have to do things that are harder than you think they're going to be. But in the long run, it pays off. This is one of those things. And it doesn't matter to me whether you do it or not. But if you don't let yourself look at it, and if you don't look at that picture of that guy and feel desire, you're never going to do it. You have to want to be him more than you want to be him. Is that true?
True.
Well, that's the carrot. You know, and if you want to do it, then do it. If you don't, don't. Just that simple. I'm sorry, I'm just screwing with you now, just because I can. Okay. So let me ask you this. What's the most determined thing you've ever been?
When I had to get outside of a situation that had no exit. I had to get out of a situation which seemingly did not have an exit, and I had to just push through and find my way.
Right. Okay. Now, when you did that, okay, you felt determination in your body, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you see what it is you had to get out of?
It was a financial situation.
Well, it's a financial situation, but when you were thinking about the memory right now, what did you see in your mind? Because you looked a little more ferocious than when you looked at that treadmill.
Yes, true.
Okay. So I was just asking because I wanted you to get back that feeling of ferociousness. Which way did it spin in your body?
It didn't spin. I had to go
Okay.
and get out. find
You're
a way out.
answering a more complicated question than I'm asking. Okay. When you looked at the picture and you remembered being determined, did it spin, tumble forward, rotate back in your body? Did it go clockwise, counterclockwise?
It was coming this way. I had to go this way.
It was.
It was coming in like this, and I had to evade and go forward.
Okay. So it spins this way when you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, when I'm doing the right thing, it goes.
Okay,
this
that's tumbling forward.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about getting on the treadmill, do your feelings tumble forward?
way. I go this way.
Okay, that's the wrong way.
That's the wrong way.
Okay, so you need to think about the treadmill, right, and do it the wrong way, right? Slow it down, close your eyes, slow it down, and let it spin in the wrong direction, and then slow it down until it stops. And then start spinning it in the other direction. And then make bigger circles and bigger circles and bigger circles till you start to feel determination. This is how you control your feelings with your anthemic nervous system. Does that feel more right?
Oh, much more right.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Yes.
I appreciate this like a masterclass in watching hypnotherapy and helping people so much. It's magic to watch. Is it easy to teach us how to get people into trance, into hypnosis?
And who's us? Oh, everybody. Yeah, well, I can teach you how to go into a trance. I've been a hypnotist for 54 years. And to me, you have to know what it looks like to get somebody there. I did this by using machines. I had brainwave machines and would trance people down because there is an infinite number of trances.
Yeah.
Some are more useful for some things than others. A lot of hypnotists, try to stay out of trance. I try to take people into trance because I think we all resonate. And as much as I can resonate, like when you're sitting around a campfire and one person starts yawning, everybody starts yawning. We have a connection with each other.
Yeah.
See, I know this as a physicist because of my favorite experiment. My favorite experiment is they took a yogurt culture and they took the yogurt culture and they measured its electrical current and they fed it milk, which is what yogurt eats, and it went wild. Then they divided it in half and they fed half of it and the other half went wild. And then they put it further and further and further apart. And when they fed this part would respond. Then they put things in between. They put lead shielding and electromagnetic fields. And it didn't seem to matter. They ended up at Stanford having it at opposite ends of the linear accelerator. And still yogurt knew when the other yogurt was eating. Because insofar as we're similar, we share energy that's things. When you make a photon of light, you always get two, and they go in opposite directions. And if the electrical field and the magnetic field are going like that, that's what laser light looks like. It's where it's perfectly aligned. When you turn a laser light like this, because it goes through biorefringent material, this one over here turns too. And which ultimately means we'll have faster than light communication. But to me, what it means is if I can control my state, it's easier to control yours.
Yeah.
So when you say, can I teach you how to put somebody in a trance? I can show you how to relax. And I intend to do that in a few minutes. So if you're in a hurry, we could do it now.
Sounds great.
All right. Why don't you sit down, put your feet on the floor, put your hands on your thighs like this, and rub it back and forth in opposite directions. So one forward, one back, one forward, one back. Okay. And then all of a sudden, pull them both back and push them both together. Take a deep breath in through your mouth. Hold it for a second. Slowly let it out through your nose. Close your eyes and go inside and relax. And relax your shoulders, relax your chest, relax your arms, relax your hand. And then I want you to think to yourself, I'm going to lift one of my hands as slowly as humanly possible. That means almost one neuron at a time, so that when you lift that hand up, it will allow your unconscious to come forward and your conscious mind to just step back. And there's a lot of conscious stuff going on in what I've been talking about so far. But your unconscious has been breathing, keeping your heart beating, controlling your blood pressure, creating enzymes, and doing millions and billions of things without your knowing about it. And so if you just relax, and when I talked about yawning earlier, the more I yawn, the more you'll feel relaxed, and the more you can let go inside for a moment and think about one past pleasant memory from a long time ago. Something you haven't thought about in years. Something with a smile attached to it. I know psychologists like you to go back to past painful memories, but I prefer you just find something wonderful, something that was really pleasurable, and make the picture big and bright, and keep relaxing and drifting down inside yourself. Because what you're doing now is the very same thing you did years and years ago when you first went to school. You went to school and looked at a new task. Okay, they had letters and numbers above the alphabet, above the blackboard, and there was a big A and a little a, and you didn't realize it at a time, but all of those letters would become the foundation of reading potentially an infinite number of books about an infinite number of things. Mustard jars, movie titles, name tags. You didn't realize it then because you were building a foundation. Now, if you go in your body and find at this moment, what's the most relaxed? I don't want you to do that by finding out what's tense. Check your legs, check your feet, check the back of your ankle, your stomach, your left shoulder, your right shoulder, your left ear, your cheek, your forehead, and find out what feels the most relaxed. And the minute you find it, start to circle it with your conscious mind. Take your conscious mind and take that relaxing spot and just draw a circle. And as you draw that circle round and round and round, make it a little bigger and a little bigger till it starts to spread across your entire body. Because what you're doing now is focusing on what feels relaxed and what feels good. This allows your unconscious, which has been listening to me the whole time I've been here. I know more about talking to unconscious minds than conscious ones because I studied language that way, and I have hypnotized hundreds of thousands of people in various states to do various things. First-class athletes, children, people with personal problems, schizophrenics, It didn't matter. It's all the same. The brain understands language unconsciously. We think we're conscious when we listen to language, but it all goes in unconsciously, and we understand some of it and not other parts of it. So right now, as you relax, just say to yourself inside your mind, let go, and literally focus on the tip of your forehead and circle your face counterclockwise with your mind. Circle down to the ear, down to the chin, up to the other ear, and to the forehead, and keep circling it while you relax and drift down. Because I'm going to talk to you about a client I had many years ago. I had a client that came to me from a very famous hypnotic institute where they study scientifically hypnosis at Stanford. She was sent to me as an example of somebody who could not be hypnotized, which basically meant she was inside her head and couldn't shut up. And I asked her if she could talk to herself inside her head, but to do so in a softer, lower tone, to slow down the voice, to put yawns in the voice, and just relax with her own internal dialogue. As she began to do that, she began to yawn outside, and she began to drift down, and I noticed that her face softened, that her skin softened, her breathing shallow. And as she did, she began to relax. And in my office, she fell asleep, not into a deep trance, but asleep. I woke her back up because I was supposed to teach her hypnosis. And she told me that she had been an insomniac for years. And I said, well, if you're an insomniac, that just means you have trouble going to sleep. But apparently, you didn't go to sleep with having trouble because you were relaxing your thoughts. See, if we have pictures moving too fast, we need to slow them down. If the voice inside your head is talking too quickly, we need to slow it down. We need to lower the tone of that voice and relax, and then go back to that past pleasant memory and smile when you look at it. A big shit-eaten smile. Show some teeth. Relax and realize you're capable of great pleasure. We're also capable of disappointment. We're capable of all kinds of things. But the question is, what are you going to do on purpose? My talk here has all been about thinking on purpose. I wrote a book with my wife and another author, Owen Fitzpatrick, about this a long time ago. I wanted to make a 15-play plan to get smarter. And I wanted people to be able to think on purpose. Because if you change the way you think, it changes how you feel, and therefore changes what you're actually capable of doing. Tony talked about changing beliefs. And if you think right now, I know all of you believe the sun is coming up tomorrow, especially because we're in Florida. And when the sun comes up, you have plans. You're going to do things tomorrow. Apparently, Tony has made plans for you to go someplace. Now, your belief, even though you don't answer out loud, if I go, is the sun coming up tomorrow? You know the answer for sure. There's a big picture in your mind. There's a voice and a feeling that goes with it. You need to be able to master doing that on purpose with other things. Now, the thing that you most want and need for yourself in your own personal evolution, pull down a picture of it right over the sun. Say the same thing so it feels as inevitable, and spin your feelings in exactly the same direction, and build a new, stronger belief in yourself. Your ability to believe in yourself and to do the things that you want and the things that you need is all based on whether you're going to do it now or later. And later is too long. It's better you do it now, because the sooner you build big beliefs, the sooner you get on and do the things you need to do. It's just that simple. Now, this is the point at which you really need to go and start maybe drifting down a little deeper. If you feel an involuntary jerk, and sometimes that happens, That's not a bad thing. That just means that you're relaxing in ways you're not used to. You need to soften your arms and soften your leg muscles, soften your thoughts and your internal dialogue, and just drift for a moment on the idea that right now you're controlling your neurology. You're listening to my voice, but it's not my voice doing it. It's your ability to follow instructions. And this is a good chance to line up your unconscious and your conscious thoughts so that they desire and go after the same things. So that rather than letting the past haunt you, you shrink it down to a little dot, blink it black and white, so you get out of bad habits of thought. And when you worry too much, you take that voice and turn it into Bugs Bunny or Sylvester the Cat. Suffer and thuckatash, I'll never amount to nothing. So that you don't take it seriously. The best tool and defense you have against all the bullshit of life is your sense of humor. They always say you're going to look back and laugh. My policy is do it now. Take a deep breath and just giggle a little bit. You can do better than that. That's the stuff. Think of the stuff that holds you back and giggle. Think of the stuff you want and wet your lips. Think of the stuff that holds you back and giggle. It's stupid. And then think of the stuff you want and wet your lips and tell yourself, we can do this easy, we can do it slow, but we're going to do it quickly because it's a lot more fun that way. And wiggle your toes and smile all the way up your legs. Take a deep breath and open your eyes and come back to Tony's tent. Well, I'd like to thank you all. I really have nothing else to say at this point other than thank you. It's been fun. I want to thank Tony for having me here. It was a pleasure, Tony. Keep up the fucking good work.
Let's give it up for Richard.